everyone, it's me, Crafty Witch, and welcome back to my channel. So I wanted to do a book review on, maybe I should put the right side of the book, on Keldon's The Crooked Path, an introduction to traditional witchcraft. Oh, I'm such a goof. Anyway, welcome to my channel. If you are a returning subscriber, welcome back to the chaos and the madness. And if you are brand new here, consider subscribing, like the video, hit the bell icon so you know when I upload, because I do not have a set time to upload videos. I do not have a set schedule. Some people are so amazing at like, I upload every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. I cannot do that. My job is super demanding. I'm on call 365 days out of the year, which really sucks because I never really get any real downtime. But when I do get some downtime, I do like to try to put out videos. And when I get on a roll, sometimes I'll pump out like 2, 3, 4 videos in a day, and then I might be like silent on my channel for a long time after that, and then I'll come back and I'll do another couple videos, and then I'm gone for a couple weeks or what have you, or even a few months, a few years. But anyway, hit the bell icon so you do know when I upload. So I want to do a book review on this book. Some people love this book, and some people don't like it very much. This is just going to be my opinion of my experience reading the book and my thoughts, and you can disagree with it. That's okay. You don't need to like it. That's totally fine. But this is, I thought, a really good book. I thought it was really interesting. What did I like about it? It's very well written and it's very well organized. I really appreciated that. Well, first of all, let's just talk about this cover. I love it. So my aesthetic is really kind of like gothic. I love skulls. I got skulls, like I prefer human skulls, but I got like skulls like all over my house, and gargoyles, and I wear typically a lot of black, and like I've got these Doc Marten boots and shoes that have like red embroidered roses on them. They're called Vondas. I got like the 1914s and I got the 1460s, and that is my style. I love like roses on a black background and skulls and stuff like that. So when I saw the cover of the book, I was like, yes, I love it. I need to have it. And you should never judge a book by its cover, but I wanted it because it was so beautiful to me, and I really enjoyed that. And it's a very nice cover. But like I said, never judge a book by its cover, because ultimately the cover doesn't mean diddly squat. It's what's in between the cover that counts, right? So I was already biased when I saw the cover. I do like this book. I found it very well written. I appreciated the fact that Keldon has, and I'm going to assume his gender, I'm going to call Keldon a he, and if that's wrong, I'm sorry, but they have broken down the book into 13 chapters, and within those 13 chapters, I'm dyslexic, I think. He broke down the book into 5 sections, part 1 through to part 5. And my cat is grooming herself right here, so you probably hear her making all kinds of noise. And then he's got 13 chapters that he then divided into these 5 sections of the book. So I thought, oh, okay, that's pretty cool. So like part 1 is what is traditional witchcraft, and that includes chapter 1 and 2. So chapter 1 is called Defining Traditional Witchcraft, and then chapter 2 is the historical development of traditional witchcraft. Part 2 is working with magic, and then he includes, 4 chapters there, and so on and so forth. If you want to know, I'm not going to sit here and read it to you guys because you guys probably get bored. But anyway, go check it out. I thought it was very well written. And then, I thought he was kind of trying too hard to say, this is not Wicca, this is not Wicca, this is traditional witchcraft. And it felt like he was like really trying to convince the reader that this is not Wicca. And when I read it, to me, it had a strong Wiccan taste to it, a strong Wiccan flair, if you will. And you could totally disagree with that, but to me it felt like if you took away the Wheel of the Year, which is a strong part of a lot of Wiccan belief systems, if you took that away, so like those 8 festivals of the year kind of thing, you took that away, you kind of have this, in my opinion. Now, I'm not saying it's good or bad, and I'm not bashing Wicca by any means. I believe that any path that you find joy in, that brings you joy and fulfillment, it's good. And I don't care if it's a new path or an old path. That don't matter to me. I've got nothing against Wicca. I've got nothing against Wiccans. I've got nothing against any path. But this, to me, had a very strong Wiccan feel to it. Just minus some of the key elements, I guess, of Wicca. And of course, the flip of that is, well, you know, Wicca is based on this. But because this has only been out for like, I don't know, 2 years, a year and a half, what have you, then, you know, it's kind of like, but was this book actually influenced by Wicca? I feel that it was. I think Keldon states in here that, you know, he talks a little bit about his own background, which I believe originally was Wiccan, and then he shifted over to traditional witchcraft, which is totally fine. But I feel that it really did influence this book, and his presentation of his version of what traditional witchcraft is, I think was heavily influenced by Wicca, and still is. He may not agree with that. Nobody else may agree with that, but that's just my opinion. It felt very Wiccan-y to me. Especially when you start talking about like the witch father and the witch mother, and it's like, okay, come on, that's the Lord and the lady, that's the goddess and the god, that's the male and the female, that's that duality, that plurality aspect of it, of deity. It's just been repackaged and rebranded. The same goes for laying of the compass. You can call it laying of the compass, but what you're really doing is casting a circle. To me, it just seems and feels like Wicca that has been rebranded and labeled as being traditional witchcraft and presented to the reader with the exclusion of certain kind of Wiccan things. He doesn't, you know, it's not about the law of 3, and it's not about any harm none, do as you will. That has been removed from it and stripped from it. Like, some of the Wiccan constructs have been stripped from it, but to me, it still has this real heavy kind of Wiccan feel to it. But I'm not saying it was a bad book, and you can totally disagree with me, and that's totally okay. But to me, it still felt like Wicca, but it's been like kind of stripped down, bare bones, rebranded, repackaged, and presented as traditional witchcraft. And you may not agree, and you may not like that, and that's okay. That's just how it came across to me. I'm sharing how it came across to me, how I felt about it, kind of thing. But that aside, like I said, it's very well written. I'm just looking at the book now, like thumbing through it again, kind of thing. And he's got some great recipes in here. He's got like 47 different exercises throughout the whole entire book, which after you go through like part one, kind of your table of contents here, right after that, he lists all the exercises, and there's exercises for every single chapter, multiple exercises, all kinds of exercises to do, you know, how to connect with your ancestors, how to connect with the land spirits. And he talks about like the whites and the, you know, how to create a fetch, how to do like create a charm bag and all that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of information in here. I don't care if you're Wiccan or if you're a witch or a pagan, if you're kind of just new and starting out on this path. I think this is a really good book to read. Some people might find it helpful if they've already kind of been on the path. It might be a little confusing to maybe somebody who's brand spanking new and doesn't have a whole lot of info. Or maybe if you're totally new, you might find it really good. I think having some sort of basis already, some sort of fundamental information about paganism would be helpful if you do read this book. But I think it's still a really, really good book, regardless what path you happen to be on, whether you're considering yourself to be a traditional witch or a folklorist witch or a Wiccan or whatever. I still think there's a lot of useful information in here. The part about the fetch, for whatever reason, reminded me of Ed Fitch's book from like 1996 that I used to own. It was called Grimoire of Shadows. I gave that book away a few years ago. Darn that condo lady or whatever. I gave about 300 to 400 books, I think, away just a few years ago, and that was one of them. And I really wish I would have kept it because I believe it's out of print now. But I am pretty darn sure, and I could be wrong because I haven't read that book for about 20 some years, but for whatever reason, when I read Keldon's part about, you know, creating this fetch, reminded me of Ed's book, because I'm sure Ed talked about that in there too. Ed, I think, and I could be wrong, you have to bear with me, I'm pushing 50, you guys. I'm getting old, and I haven't read that book, like I said, in over 20 years. But there was something when I read Keldon's part about creating the fetch, it just triggered this memory for whatever reason about that particular book, Grimoire of Shadows by Ed Fitch. And I'm pretty sure there's something in the book, that particular book, where he talks about like creating a fetch. And it must have been something maybe similar. Maybe I'm completely wrong. But when I read this book, I remembered Ed's book. And in my mind, I think Ed wrote about that, and I felt that they were kind of similar. But I could be wrong because I don't have that book any longer to reference and to compare the two. But dang, now it sucks. Now I feel like I should go track down that book, but I gave it and a whole bunch of other books away, and I should have kept it. Should have kept it. But anyway, for whatever reason, it triggered that link in my brain between these two different books and two different authors from two different time periods. So Keldon also goes on to talk about like familiar spirits, and they're not your pets. And I was like, yes, yes, yes. That being said, I have had a familiar who was a pet only once in my life. I've got pets now. Do I consider them to be familiars? No, absolutely not. But that one particular one was definitely a familiar. And then Keldon talks about like connecting with your ancestors, different types of ancestors, like kind of like the ancestors of the land you might be on, your genetic ancestors, your like the other ancestors, like the mighty dead and stuff like that. And I thought, hey, that's really cool information. So I really appreciated that. Ancestral work is something that's a really important and large part of my practice and always has been. And so it's always been really important to me. So when I saw that in here, I was like, I really, really like that. And I really appreciated that. But this book really has a lot of information, a lot of exercises, how to connect with plants, how to communicate with plants. You know, he talks about shape-shifting and all kinds of information. His take on shape-shifting is very similar to what a lot of people in the pagan community believe shape-shifting to be, which is only something that can be done in, he might call it the other world, some people might call it astral projection, or in the astral world, or what have you. A lot of people that have not grown up in certain cultures or belief systems and then come to paganism later on through life tend to believe that physical shape-shifting is non-existent, cannot happen, and only happens in like the spirit world or the other world or the astral world, right? It's important to know that there's a lot of cultures and belief systems in this world, around this world, that believe in the physical ability to shapeshift, regardless what your laws of science say. You take that out of the equation. There are a lot of cultures that strongly believe in the physical ability to shapeshift, and within those cultures or those belief systems, that ability is not seen as something you do in the spirit world or something that you would do in the astral world. And if you went up to certain people, like say elders in that community, or shamans or medicine people in that community, and you talked about like, oh, well, you know, I believe in shape-shifting, or, you know, I shape-shift in the astral world, they might look at you like, what are you talking about? Because there's the belief of it actually happening in the physical world. And his view is very much of the, I'm going to say Eurocentric view, that it only happens in the kind of like the other world, the non-physical world. And so I disagreed with that, because I've grown up believing, and how do I word this properly and diplomatically, so not to offend, but I've grown up or am part of cultures, I'm talking about the Cree, the Anishinaabe, cultures that strongly believe that shapeshifting is very much real, that you can physically shapeshift into an owl, a crow, a deer, a wolf, a rock, a tree, that kind of thing. There are people, there are indigenous people around the world that strongly believe in shapeshifting and the ability to physically shapeshift. We're not talking about astral shapeshifting or astral projection or somewhere out in the spiritual, the unseen world or what have you. We're talking about the physical body actually being able to shapeshift into another form of some sort. And a lot of people that I find that tend to be from certain backgrounds that come to paganism later on through their life, that did not grow up in a culture or a community that believed in that or had that as part of their identity, part of their collective cultural identity or something like that, tend to believe that it cannot happen physically. They tend to believe it can only happen in the spiritual realms or the astral world or the other world, that kind of thing. And Keldon seems to come from that background or that belief, where he doesn't believe it can happen in the physical, it can only happen in the astral. And I disagree with that because of the cultural groups I belong to and the belief systems and the spiritual practices that incorporate that into our way of life. My background, I am so mixed beyond belief with my ancestry, but that is something that's very strongly part of our belief systems and our spirituality or what have you. It's a given. And I mean, there's some younger folks nowadays that they've been really influenced, I guess, by mainstream society into thinking it's phony baloney, it's not possible, what about science? But there's certain things that you're going to experience or may experience on your path that will break every kind of law of science that you can think about and could drastically alter your perception of what could potentially happen, and to be open to that, because there's certain things that just cannot be explained, but they do happen. So anyway, I didn't agree with that part, but that's okay. He is writing from his perspective, his experience, and I respect that. And I just noticed that a lot of folks that have come to paganism and stuff like that, that do talk about shape-shifting, especially if they've come to paganism later on in their life. They didn't grow up in a culture or a belief system that believed in it, especially in the physical aspect of it, being able to physically shift. When they do talk about shape-shifting, they revert back to like astral shifting, spirit world shifting, like, you know, it's always somewhere out there. It can't happen physically here. And so that is just something I noticed with a lot of authors that do that, and Keldon seems to have done that as well. But does that take away from any of this? No. He's got an amazing wealth of information in here with exercises. There's like 47 exercises to do, all kinds of things, from making a fairy wand to making a charm bag, to connecting with different kinds of ancestors or land spirits and things like that, creating a fetch, all kinds of information. Do I think it's well worth owning and having in your library? Absolutely. I think you should read it with an open mind. I think that if you're from one end of a spectrum where you're like, that's not real traditional witchcraft, that's just Wicca rebranded, I would still recommend that you read it and you keep an open mind about it. And to also like recognize that this is this author's, his experiences presented in, I think, a well thought out, well-written form, and he's trying to present something that I think is more relevant to people, regardless where you happen to be living, because a lot of, you know, so-called traditional witchcraft, a lot of it is based upon or has roots, or the more popular ones tend to be, you know, British traditional witchcraft. And when I say British, that could be your Scottish, your English, your Irish, what have you. It's very much kind of like the British Isles. Yeah, there's a lot of information, of course, a lot of historical accounts of this and that and witchcraft trials. Keep in mind, when it says traditional witchcraft, this to me is very much British traditional witchcraft that has been rebranded with kind of like, so that it can apply to anybody throughout the world kind of thing. But it does, a lot of it is based on the accounts over in the British Isles, specifically like England, Scotland, that kind of thing. Does that mean that traditional witchcraft is only based on the British Isles? To me, in my mind, absolutely not. There is German traditional witchcraft, there's Italian traditional witchcraft, there's Greek traditional witchcraft, there's all kinds of traditional witchcraft, depending on what area of the world it's been practiced and that kind of thing. So to me, this is very much kind of British influenced, or influenced by the British Isles. However, he does talk about like connecting to the land where you are now. It doesn't, and he does talk about like it doesn't make sense to be celebrating like Sabbats or these certain holidays that might have originated in another part of the world that does not apply to where you are now. Right now it is March 13th, I think. It's Sunday. I know that. Yeah, it's March 13th. I've got a 5-foot snowbank in my front yard. There's about 4 feet of snow in my backyard where I am. We got so much snow, and when people are talking about like a star is coming up and planting these seeds and everything, and going outside and it's spring. It's not spring where I'm at, and it's still very much winter here. We're not going to see spring for a long time. This week alone, it was minus 40 Celsius with the wind chill where I live. Spring ain't coming for a while here. So I really respected that about what he wrote in here, and about really tailoring your practice to the land and the rhythms of the land where you live on. I have total respect for that, and I'm so down for that. And it's like, yes, 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 that makes total sense, because I too have followed certain things that kind of like, you do it because it's kind of been written about, but it's like, geez, this really doesn't make a whole lot of sense for where I'm living, because spring's nowhere near coming to where I live anytime soon. We're still very much in winter. We probably are still going to have snow right through to May where I live. Like, that's no word of a lie. It's still going to be pretty cold, and with the amount of snow that we've had this year, I'm pretty sure the snow is probably going to stick around till May. I don't see it disappearing before then, and that's just the way it is. We've got so much snow. So yeah, so he talks about like connecting with the season, the weather in your part of the world. Hello, Chansey. So I like that. Lots of different exercises, lots of different things you can create and make and do and try. Lots of information. He's got a really good bibliography. He's got a cool little glossary. I would recommend this book absolutely to anybody, whether you're Wiccan or whether you want to follow traditional witchcraft. But to me, it does feel like a stripped down version of Wicca. When I say stripped down, I mean like you take away like the law of 3, you take away the, ouch, she needs some cuddles. You take away some of the Wiccan philosophy, and you kind of rebrand it a little bit, and then it's coming across as tradition, like, it's being presented as being traditional witchcraft. But to me, it still feels like a strong Wiccan influence, just different terminology. But do I think that that's any less... Do I think the book is any less because of that? No, I think it's still a really good book. I still highly recommend it. But to me, it's kind of like a stripped down version of Wicca that's been rebranded, repackaged, and put out there as traditional witchcraft. And you may not agree with that, and that's okay. I still think it's a good book. Hey, Chansey. So that's it for now. Ciao.